Dr. Victor Gao, who's the Vice President, Center for China and Globalization, Beijing, and who's been honorably introduced already.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to come to Islamabad again to attend today's IW.
Now, may I invite, I think my first panelist is going to be Dr. Victor Gao, who's the Vice President, Center for China and Globalization, Beijing, and who's been honorably introduced already.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to come to Islamabad again to attend today's IWT seminar. You may remember about 1 year ago, in May and June 2025, when India started to threaten to stop the flow of water in the Indus River to Pakistan, when the Indian Prime Minister Modi started to threaten not to allow a single drop of water to flow from the Indus River to Pakistan. I was interviewed by a major Indian television, and I declared, in times of peace, to threaten to stop the flow of water to the downstream country, where hundreds of millions would depend on the water, it will be a crime against humanity. In times of war, if you stop the flow of water to the hundreds of millions of people in the downstream region, it will be a war crime. And I urged India not to do so. Further, I emphasized, strictly speaking, while Pakistan is the downstream country, India is not exactly the upstream nation. You know, the Indus rivers and many of the tributaries actually flow from the Himalayas. And I emphasized, don't do unto others what you don't want others to do unto you. The anchor asked me, are you threatening India? I said, no, I'm not threatening India. This wise saying, don't do unto others what you don't want others to do unto you, was said by Confucius about 2,500 years ago. It has been generally accepted as wisdom by the Chinese nation. So I said, allow me to repeat this 3 times for your benefit. So I repeated it for another 3 times. And I want to say that again to India. Don't do unto others what you don't want others to do unto you, because strictly speaking, as far as Indus River is concerned, India is not exactly the upstream country. And China and Pakistan, fully respecting each other, can really do many things together to make sure the IWT clauses should be strictly abided by. I'm very much impressed today to hear all the good remarks, excellent speeches, very eloquent remarks made by many of the representatives, many of which I fully agree. Allow me to make several points of my own in my personal capacity. First of all, to deal with the violation of the IWT should be fully exposed and should be stopped as much as we can. In this sense, in my personal capacity, I want to fully support the positions taken by many of the Pakistani speakers. Secondly, as I mentioned, China and Pakistan should cooperate fully on this particular point. While the IWT itself should be fully protected, I think, theoretically speaking, we could also start to think about a trilateral agreement involving China, India, and Pakistan, the 3 countries constituting the real upstream country, the midstream country, and the downstream country, to make sure that the flow of the water should not be interrupted and should be better managed. Much of it has been reflected in the IWT clauses already. Thirdly, allow me to emphasize that I counted on my fingers actually, there are about altogether 18 countries which depend on the water flown from rivers originating from the what we call Qinghai Tibet Plateau. This is very significant. I understand up to today there is no regional or international framework which would focus on this commonality of the water originating from the Qinghai Tibetan Plateau. And the Indus River water is important in itself, but on a more general and macro framework, it's part of this commonality of the water originating from the Qinghai Tibetan Plateau. So while the urgency is to deal with the violations of the IWT treaty itself, I think we should also spare time to think about whether all these countries together should think about and work together to come up with a framework so that common standards, common rules, regulations, and the best code of conduct should be introduced, not only between India and Pakistan, but also with many other countries. The 18 countries also not only exist here in the Indian subcontinent, which is the focus of our discussion today, but also exists in Southeast Asia as well as in Central Asia. I hope if we have a better code of conduct for all these 18 countries, and the rules of conduct should be endorsed and accepted by the United Nations, for example, and generally accepted by the international community. In that sense, I hope in the future, after this violation of the IWT will eventually be resolved, hopefully peacefully rather than violently, all the countries in this part of the world which depend on the water originating from the Qinghai Tibetan Plateau should live in greater peace. Now, please also allow me to make another additional point. I highly admire the good offices, the mediation done by the Pakistani government and the Pakistani people, led by Your Great Excellency, the Prime Minister, and the great Field Marshal, the Chief of Staff of the Pakistani Army. I hope they will continue to work in the right direction to make sure peace will prevail eventually between the United States and Iran. Now, someone talked about the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Allow me to emphasize, as the President of Germany emphasized before, the Strait of Hormuz was open for navigation before the war against Iran started. So we need to address the issue which gave rise to the war against Iran, and we should work together to make sure that the Strait of Hormuz eventually will remain open for free navigation, and no country, for example, India, should be tolerated or allowed to deny the free flow of water in the Indus River to the hundreds of millions of people in Pakistan. Finally, it's a bet. If the Prime Minister of Pakistan and the Field Marshal of Pakistan continue to work in the right direction, I hope they will earn or share a Nobel Peace Prize. That's my best wish. To make the real final point, no one in this part of the world should second-guess China's commitment to defend the fundamental interests of Pakistan, especially including Pakistan's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and in the context of our meeting today, Pakistani people's right to the free flow of water in the Indus River. I thank you very much.